As Srila so nicely said, this Chasing Rhinos with the Swami in 3 big volumes has been my work for the last 4 years. And in one way you can say that these books are part payment of the debt I owe my spiritual master, His Divine Grace Abhay Charan Bhaktivedanta Swami. And we called him Srila Prabhupada. There's a verse in Srimad Bhagavatam where the spiritual master is addressing his students. In this case, it's Krishna and Sudama. He says, Sandipani Muni said, "O my children, you have suffered so much for my sake. This indeed is the duty of all true disciples, to repay the debt to their spiritual master by offering him with pure hearts their wealth and even their very lives. O my children, you have suffered so much for my sake." And when I look back at those days serving Srila Prabhupada, the 24/7 energy we poured into expanding his movement out into the world, I ask myself, was this really suffering or sacrifice? No. No, indeed. In the presence of our newly found master, we were the happiest people on the planet. This indeed is the duty of all true disciples, to repay the debt to their spiritual master by offering him with pure hearts their wealth and even their very lives. Debt? Debt to the spiritual master. Yes, you can say that we have felt this debt, but it's not like an obligation that pressures you to repay it. Srila Prabhupada gave us Krishna Consciousness as a true gift. A gift truly given doesn't require repayment. The most precious gift liberates. It frees you. It empowers you to give onwards. And we gave until we dropped, sure. But our efforts are insignificant compared with Srila Prabhupada's gift to us. And isn't it a little laughable to think that anything we gift to Srila Prabhupada can in any way be considered as paying back our debt to him? In this regard, I was reminded of another very cool verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. Prithu Maharaj continued, "How can such persons who have rendered unlimited service by explaining the path of self-realization in relation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and whose explanations are given for our enlightenment with complete conviction and Vedic evidence, how can they be repaid except by folded palms containing water for their satisfaction?" In his purport to this verse, Srila Prabhupada comments on the Sanskrit words in this verse. The word Vinoda Patram means joker. A joker's activities simply arouse laughter. And a person who tries to repay the spiritual master or teacher of the transcendental message of Krishna becomes a laughing stock, just like a joker, because it is not possible to repay such a debt. So by writing these books, you can say that I'm one of Srila Prabhupada's jokers, attempting without the possibility of success to repay my debt to him. I'm so glad Guru Das is here today, because Guru Das and I shared a very special rasa with Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada made us laugh. 50 years later, from this historical perspective, people may say, oh, they sacrificed so much. But if you ask Guru Das or I, what it was really like back then, we'll say, those were the best times of our lives. We had more fun then than we've ever had before or since. Srila Prabhupada was a laugh riot. I asked him once, Srila Prabhupada, what does it mean, laughter? What is laughter? And Srila Prabhupada thought a second and he said, laughter is the difference between what you expect and what really happens. I said, Srila Prabhupada, why do you make me laugh so much? And he said, maybe you expect too much. So I've gone through something like 30,000 photographs, Srila Prabhupada, doing the research for these books. Number one, in the first place, there's not a bad photo in the lot. You couldn't take a bad photo of Srila Prabhupada. And secondly, whenever there's a picture of me in these photos, I think close to 80% of the photos that I'm somewhere in there, I'm laughing. I'm like this. Everybody else is. Here's a paragraph in my book from the early days in San Francisco. Right off, one of the things I liked best about the Swami, he made you laugh. He was always calm and content, sure, but more than that, he was jolly. Even discussing very serious subjects, there was often the play of a smile around his lips, a chuckle to make a point, chuckle by chuckle building our inner glee. Then suddenly the guffaw, the quick delight. And when he's really surprised by the overtly absurd, a full rounded belly laugh trembles his body, tears streaming from his tight squinted eyes. He said, you'll feel yourself transcendently joyful in spite of your present physical body. Just like if you eat, you'll know yourself that you are eating. You are feeling strength. You are getting enlightened. Similarly, if you take this process of Krishna consciousness, in spite of your present physical body, you'll know that you are having something transcendental. That feeling will come with you. Krishna is always jolly. And if you join his society, you will also become jolly. Sure, we worked harder than it seems humanly possible in those days, but the lightness and freedom from anxiety of devotional service empowered us with the same superhuman energy which we saw in Srila Prabhupada. It was all one great adventure. There's another paragraph from the book. Swamiji had explained in a lecture that Krishna most appreciates devotees who risk the most on his behalf. And if you risk everything for Krishna, he must personally intervene to remove obstacles to your risky service. Most of us in Haight-Ashbury in 1967 were there at great risk, giving up the comforts of homes, educations, careers, and society to become outcasts searching for meaning. Many of us had already at a young age traveled widely, taken great risks with drugs and the law, and we had carved out an independent lifestyle. So we immediately connected with the Swami's courage, the message of courage. We dug his message that to get Krishna, you must take risks. You can say that we were all on a great adventure with the Swami, and it was the most exhilarating adventure of our lives. I'll just read a couple of paragraphs from those early days in San Francisco. Whenever you came to the Swami's door, your heart was in your throat. This feeling never left me even after 1,000 trips to that door. There was a heightened sense that something marvelous was about to occur, a tingling in the blood. You never knew what to expect, just that it would be a wonderful surprise, whatever happened. He'd be sitting behind his little table, or in his rocker clicking his beads, dressed in saffron, maybe with a white sweater, sunlight through the south-facing window shining on his freshly oiled head, and his face a radiant gold emerging from some deep bliss. And he would welcome you no matter what hour of day or night. Or this one. Swamiji sits lotus style on a thin mattress on the floor behind a low coffee table, morning sun pouring through the window. I mark his radiance, his beaming wide-eyed face, his eyes looking straight into mine, the swollen bow curve and tremble of his dark full lips around big teeth. So beautiful I nearly faint. Motioning me now to scoot over and sit beside him behind the low table. His grace, his fragrance, which I later learn is sandalwood. He slips his glasses from a little case and takes his pen from another case, and brushing my arm with his shoulder, the soft rustle of cotton and jolts of electricity shoot through my neck, and I'm overwhelmed with well-being. Do you know bookkeeping? He asks me. This was the Swami's management style. Chasing the rhino is risky high adventure, that's one thing, the theme of our activity. But the activity itself should be practical. Bhaktivedanta Swami harnessed what little practical talent or skills that we had and personally fit them into the larger task. He made you feel important, that your tiny service had huge consequences. And little by little, the Swami gave us someone to love, something to do, and something to hope for. These are the secrets to happiness and successful life. You may have heard some of the stories. Lord Jagannath's first appearance in the West in San Francisco, from Malati's nimble fingers to mine, and then through Srila Prabhupada to the whole world. Or the first Rath Yatra in 1967. Or you may have heard of the famous mantra rock dance, or Srila Prabhupada's amazing adventures in Britain with the Beatles, and how he caused magic to happen wherever he went. Magic. As hippies in those days, we had evolved sort of a lifestyle based on magic. Things didn't happen by cause and effect. Life was magical and full of surprise. So we came to expect magic. So when Srila Prabhupada stepped through that perfect historical window in time and showed us the life of unceasing magic, we fell for him, hook, line, and sinker. And did Krishna put on a magic display for us? We saw $100 bills raining from the sky on Ashbury Street. We saw the man waiting in the queue behind Gurdas in the bank in downtown London, who just happens to know me from San Francisco, and who just happens to be a real estate agent who has a 6-story empty building a few paces off Oxford Street and a block from the British Museum, and for the very cheap rent of £36 a week. We got to see the bolt of lightning that convinces George Harrison to print the Krishna book. It's a very short story. I'll just read it for your entertainment. Srila Prabhupada called me to his room and asked me if I would ask George Harrison for £19,000 to print Krishna book. By surprise. I said, Prabhupada, my relationship with George is based on the fact that I never ask him for anything. I really don't want to do that. And he said, okay, then you tell him your spiritual master wants him to give the money. Oh, okay. I didn't want to do it. He saw the hesitancy, and he said, you will see, Krishna will help you. So that day I went with George to buy the marble for the altar at Berry Place Temple in London. It was going to be a very expensive purchase by George, 2,000 or 3,000 pounds, as I recall. And he'd already committed to that, but somehow I had to ask him for another $19,000. I didn't want to do it. So we went to David Wynn's house after the marble purchase for dinner. David Wynn was the sculptor laureate of England in those days. He designed the coin. Charles. So the story starts right after dinner. It's getting late. I haven't asked George for the money yet. Gillian is David Wynn's wife. So as Gillian started clearing the dishes, it's now or never, the party's over. It's a long drive back through the night. I looked across the table to George and said, George, Prabhupada wanted me to ask you something. I hand the pictures to him from the Krishna book across the table. He's been working for a year or so on this big book called Krishna. You've seen all those nice paintings by devotees in his other books? Well, this book has dozens of paintings like these, and it's all about. He wanted me to ask you if you'd print it for him. There, it's out. As I'm explaining all of this, I see George's face start to change from happy-go-lucky dinner-time friends and patter about football to serious and then to angry. And I think, oh, I've screwed this thing up forever. A brilliant white-blue flash comes through the windows. Kaboom! Lights go out. A lightning bolt has hit the house. It's total dark and silence for maybe 10 seconds. I can hear everyone breathing. Suddenly the lights come back on. Bach starts playing up again in the living room. Everyone's oohing and awing. I look at George expecting the worst, but a husky laugh, and he's got this huge grin on his face, and he says, well, how much is it then? Shortly after midnight, I pull in front of Berry Place and see that the light's still on behind the blue curtains in Prabhupada's room upstairs. He's still here. He hasn't gone back to Farley Court. I park, unlock the door, and quietly go up the stairs and timidly knock on Prabhupada's door. Yes, come in, he says. So, what is the news? I bow, and before I can even sit up, I'm blurting out, he says he'll print Krishna book. As I give my excited report about both the marble and the book, I'm beaming all over, but Prabhupada is just smiling and calm, even after I tell him about the lightning hitting the house. And still, there's that special gleam in his eye that I'm beginning to recognize. He's especially happy. And George said, magic. There's so many stories. I won't keep going. It's a dream come true to sit again with so many of my dear God brothers and God sisters who knew and sported with Srila Prabhupada in this world. And my deepest gratitude is to all of you for making Srila Prabhupada's dreams come true. In one way, we are all Srila Prabhupada's jokers, trying without any hope for success to repay the debt to our spiritual master. But we have to keep trying anyway, and that's the fun of it all. So I've written this Chasing Rhinos with the Swami to be a fun read. An adventure, really. An adventure novel. Trying to recapture those pleasure-filled days of chasing rhinos with Srila Prabhupada. I never thought in my old age I'd be merchandising for a living, retail sales. But I'm surrendered to this. It's Krishna's joke upon me. If you haven't seen the book yet, I'll be manning the booth at the very back here after the show. I pray you will help me in this loving endeavor. Thanks so much, you guys. I love you all. All glories to our beloved Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Jai.